ironically enough, I was ill-equipped to raise a black son, even though I was a black son at one moment in my life.
I'm gonna ask you to say that again. Say that
I
one more
was ill-equipped. Ill-equipped. I was ill-equipped to raise a black son,
even though.
even though to this day I am still a black son.
Yeah.
And so that stood out to me because there's so many layers to it.
Let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's
What's up, people? Welcome to Black Dad Unfiltered. I'm Carlos V. Spencer here with the one and only Coach Rod. We're here.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Listen, life is good, man. Life is good. I don't know if I ever told you. Funny enough, in line with what we're doing, talking about being a father. Once I realized my kids were healthy, had all their limbs, their faculties, I was like, as long as they're alive, my life is good.
Bro, you about to have me jump in already. We just starting, man. Because for me, it's very similar. Like I've always said that with my children, I want to do better. I want to do good in life. I want to succeed. I want to accomplish things. But if those things for some reason didn't happen, my children being healthy, I'm good. Like I really am.
Yeah,
I wouldn't trade
yeah,
that with anybody. I've seen black fathers who are quote unquote very successful, but the child may have a sickness that the money can't even change. And I'm like, I'm good.
yeah, yeah. It gives you a sense of perspective, right?
It does. It does. It
Yeah,
definitely. I think for me, testament to what you just said, just fatherhood and having your children healthy is and for those who may be dealing with something with your child, we definitely our hearts go out to you. We're praying for you. But I think definitely what we're saying for those of you who you have a healthy child, healthy children, man, that's a blessing, man. Like there's not much more you can ask for, to be quite honest, man. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
yeah, yeah. Let's rock and roll, bro.
So we here, man, Black Dad Unfiltered. We're here talking about some different topics that we have researched. We have reached out to different people to see different things they want to talk about. This is our episode, first episode, kicking it off. And I think one other way to kick it off, like you and I were discussing, is why do we want to do this? Why do we want to do it? Black Dad Unfiltered is the name of it. What's the reason behind it? When you heard that name, and actually for me, for you and I, backstory talking about it, I saw you posting it. I saw you saying stuff about it. And I was just
Yeah.
like, I loved it. Every time I saw you post something and hashtag Black Dad, I'm like, what is he saying next? So, like, where did
Yeah.
that come from for you? And then going into doing this as a podcast, why do this? What's the reason for it for you?
So it's funny, right? Because you have been getting on me for a long time. Like, Rod, we gotta do something. We gotta do something, Black Dad. Uh, but I truly enjoy being a father. Like without a shadow of a doubt, I enjoy it. Changed careers, made that tough decision between money and presence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the moment and you see and hear what your kids are actually saying to you, listen, man, I was like, okay, two can play this game, right? And we'll just play these games with them, psychological games. Like, hey, I went to your school. Your teacher told me I ain't gonna go to no school. I didn't do it, Dad. Timothy did this, this. Oh, okay, Black
Yeah,
Dad. You know what I mean?
got him.
Um, but why that brings us back to, and that's just a little backdrop on how we started this, but why the Black Dad? And there's other podcasts and organizations that trying to do what we're doing. The truth is, for me, Los, when we talked about it, it was what I see in the media today is this clash between black men and black women, right? Each one giving each other advice on how to be, stay in their lane, stay in their role.
Mm,
If black men did this, if black women did this. And in my own journey of being a father, of being a spouse at one moment in my life, I realized I had to address me. I had to fall in love with me. I had to increase my level of self-awareness. I had to understand what made me who I am today, childhood, friends, experiences. And then I realized it takes a profound level of emotional intelligence to get to a point where you can be vulnerable, which is to me is the bravest thing you can do. And then I realized how many black men out here don't have the resources, don't have the capacity, don't have the exposure to talk about themselves in an edifying way, in a way that uplifts. So I was like, let's do Black Dad, where we inspire, motivate, uplift, and share positive stories, give resources, and start the healing within our own community. Iron
Mhm.
sharpening iron, right? It's something we're probably going to say often, but let's sharpen other Black men in a safe space. Let us be the voices for those who are afraid to speak. Let this be the platform where someone can see themselves and say, oh, wow. And more importantly, let those who are impacted by Black men, by Black fathers, get a different understanding and hopefully create a different level of engagement and interaction.
Mhm.
You're going to hear me say this often. To be a Black dad, you first had to have been a Black son.
Mhm.
Then you had one moment you had to become a Black man.
Mhm.
And then at some moment you became a Black partner, whether that's marriage or any other route. So there's so many facets and layers to us. Yo, who better than me and one of my closest friends of over 20 years to just have an unfiltered conversation?
Mhm.
And hopefully somebody can find themselves in this conversation.
That's powerful. That's powerful. For me, for one, super dope hearing you say that. For those who are listening in, those who are watching in, we're Black fathers. We have children.
Mhm.
I have 5 children, 3 yourself.
So
Um,
every time you say it, I'm like, good Lord, freedom is not on the horizon for you anytime soon.
well, my oldest 3, 21, about to be 20 and about to be 19. So they getting there. They getting there. So they have to
Now,
got
say the youngest one. Tell people the youngest one.
my youngest one is actually 10 as of yesterday when we're recording this, and my next one
Okay.
is 11. It'll be 12. So I have 3 boys, 2 girls, and yourself, oldest
My oldest is 18, gonna be 19 this year.
son.
He's just my son, and then
Okay.
I have he's my namesake, and then I have my daughters who are 15 and 13, and they all go up this year.
Yeah.
So freedom's on the horizon for me.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
it's right there.
I ain't too much after you, man. I got 10 and 12. They right there. They right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And dare I say, so to be unfiltered, I got 2 sons who are younger, man. I think that's a little easier when they're sons than the daughters
listen,
being young.
listen, I'll
I'm
tell
just
you
saying.
this. My daughters are a blessing to me.
Yeah,
The
that's good.
last thing. So knock on wood, this has been a joyful ride, but the dating age didn't start yet. So we'll see. Either way, my daughter's gonna be 14. I
I
got
got
4 years left of
I
this.
got a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old, so I can help you with that a little bit of that.
And I'm
But
joking, folks, when I say 4 years left.
yeah,
Obviously,
yeah. Like that unfiltered, man. So even to go back to what you said, man, like I said, we're fathers. We're
Mhm.
fathers. We're Black fathers. I'm a speaker as well, so often I bring it up to say when you see somebody speaking in this world in front of the room, it's like what qualifies them to be in front of the room. I'm not saying that we're beyond qualified or more qualified than the next, but we're Black fathers. I believe that brings a qualification. If you are a Black father, you can have something to say about being a Black father for sure.
Listen, because we're not here to tell anyone what to do.
Hmm.
We're here to just have a conversation and hope somebody finds themselves,
That's it.
right? So think
That's
of your
it.
barbershop. Think of your uncles, and talking in the backyard. Think of you talking conversations with your friends, your boys, your girls, your cousins. Because we are in no position to tell you what to do, but we're in a position to share what we've experienced
Hmm.
and bring people in to share their experiences. What's it called? Teach one, reach one.
Hmm.
Like just create the platform where again we're edifying, we're uplifting, we're finding ways to help each other. So yeah, let's rock and roll with this,
That's
brother.
dope, man. And so for me, like, I'll just share my small piece of, of the reason for doing it. I'll go back to what we said at the beginning of this top of the show. Seeing that Black Dad, like you used to post and put Black Dad, hashtag Black Dad about different experiences you were having with your children, and I
Mhm.
would see that, and it just always jumped out at me. And it's always jumped out at me, man. So first and foremost, seeing that, and then having conversations with Black fathers who are around me. I have brothers who are fathers, who are Black fathers, right? Uncles, other male figures in my life, cousins in my life who are Black fathers. And for me, it was like, well, I want to have a conversation that I wish I could have heard somebody else having, right? I think it would
Mhm.
have helped me in my walk. So why not help somebody else? Why not create that type of conversation? The second part for me was when we put the poll out. You did something very powerful when we're talking about this behind the scenes. You said, Los, man, let's see what the people want to talk about. let's see what topics the people want to hear. And then we put the poll out to different people to see what they wanted to hear, and not just what we wanted to talk about ourselves, right? And when I started seeing some of the topics, the questions, and the things that mothers and fathers, and sons and daughters, what they wanted to talk about and what they want to hear about, that second part for me was like, this is a conversation that needs to be had. And it's not
Yeah.
just us. It's not just us. And seeing some of the stuff that they brought up, it was like, wow, it's needed. Not only is it something that I think is dope, not only is it something that I think that I want to hear, but there are a lot of things that people either want to talk about or they want to hear being talked about. So for me, that was the second part of it.
Mhm.
Seeing those the feedback from other people.
Absolutely.
So, man, we're gonna jump into the first segment of the day. Today, we're actually breaking this up into two segments, two different topics, because there's a lot, I believe, to break open in this topic. And what I mean by that, we're talking about raising Black boys in America, and not just raising Black boys in America as that broad term. We want to break that down, right? We want to break that down in different segments. Before even going to the segments, why do you think that one jumped out for you or for other people? Because we got that definitely from other people chiming in.
So, ironically enough, I was ill-equipped to raise a Black son, even though I was a Black son at one moment in my life.
I'm gonna ask you to say that again. Say that
I
one more
was ill-equipped. Ill-equipped. I was ill-equipped to
time. To raise
raise a Black son,
even
even
though,
though to this day I am still a Black son.
yeah.
And so that stood out to me because there's so many layers to it. And as to be quite candid with you, as a Black dad, you want to get it right. Now that I'm a little bit older, seasoned, and I got grays, I had to start asking myself, what is getting it right? Right? Like you're raising them for what? Right? Initially is, I want you to raise you up so that you can have a family, so that you can be a man, that you can have a good education, that you can
Mhm.
provide for your family. So I had goals in mind. And I lost context of what's happening in society today. And then realizing when I was raised as a Black son, we're talking about 2-3 decades ago. So I was ill-equipped. And so I said, listen, this is tough.
Mhm.
Because for me as a father, it's easier to raise my daughters than it is to raise my son.
And we're specifically talking about raising Black sons
Sons,
in
yeah.
America.
It's
Yeah.
not my daughters were easier. It's and so I said, okay, this is a great topic because there's days I live in fear
Mm, that's
of
real.
when he leaves the house. You know what? Funny tidbit. It's not that I'm afraid of the cops. I'm even afraid when he just transitions to school because he goes into a whole different community that doesn't look like him.
Hmm.
I'm afraid when he dates because you are a Black man. You know, if we're being unfiltered, it's not you're innocent to proven guilty. You're guilty.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now fight like heck. So there's so many things that started playing in my mind raising a son, and as I got older and became more conscious of, wait a minute, the infrastructure we live in America in particular
Hmm.
is not sensitive to Black men. It just was like, I'm not equipped for this,
Mm.
or I wasn't. And so I made a lot of mistakes. I made a
Damn.
lot of mistakes. And so it's just like, okay, this is a topic where let's talk about it. Because then when you start looking at trends in society, the broken homes, sons being raised by mothers, which I think mothers are doing a good job if they're showing their children love. This is the best we can do. But it's rampant in our society. So it's not just how do you raise a Black son, period, but how do you be a man raising a Black son? How do you be uncles raising a Black son? So to me, it was such a loaded question that I
Yeah.
thought we got to unpack this.
That was deep. The infrastructure in America that's built in America is not safe for a Black boy, a Black man. I want to ask you something. Even before we get into this part one, man, you said that there's some fear there, and you said there's some fear as far as your son when your son's leaving out into the world. when I hear you say that, it's like, okay, where did that fear come from? And when I hear you say it, it's like, does it come from your experience as a Black son, knowing what the world was like for you? Unpack that a little bit for me. Where's that fear kind of coming from?
Well, the fear is from what I'm seeing.
Okay.
So, obviously times are different. And so that's the first thing we got to wrestle with as fathers. Times are different. You and I can agree, and if we have listeners that are 50, 60, probably 40, they'll tell you they grew up with their cousins. They grew up big family, outside playing sports. So it was, what we call communalism, right? Everyone was had a hand in helping raise you. But times are different now. Society is trying to separate your kid from you, trying to separate their identity from you. When I say identity, uh, challenge the values you want to raise your kids with. So just on that level, there's the fear that I have, right? To okay, what are they feeding you in the media that has you now disliking the way you even look?
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it wasn't how I was raised,
Got you.
because what I mean, it was what it was. Sometimes days were rough, sometimes they were good. But when I'm looking at it now, and I'm wiser. We're wiser, Los. You see it. You see what they put on television. You see what they say in school. You see what resources they provide. So it just becomes not afraid in terms of I'm trembling, but almost despair, like, dang, how am I going to combat this? Or uh, I know my son last year went to the city, and we live in the city. Well, for
Hmm.
those who don't know the city, we talking about New York City. You get what I'm saying?
See, when you're
And
from New York City, I gotta just say I ain't from the city, but see, you see how you said that when you say the city, when you're from New York City, there's only one city.
city, yeah, you know what I'm saying. But I make it easier, folks, for those who are asking.
Right.
I'm from Brooklyn, so let's be clear about that
Oh,
right
oh,
now.
all right, okay.
But when you go into the city, in the affluent part of the city, and we're talking about what 2023, and they stop you in a store because a woman said you stole something, you're a young kid, no adults around you, and no adults in your corner,
Mhm.
and all the adults around you surround you, grab your bag, and search you.
This happened.
This is real life.
This
That's what I
happened to
told you.
your
What
son.
this happened last year. Last year, went to track practice, went into a store. A woman, hey, he got something in his bag. And my son, because when raising black kids, we're trying to raise them to be good citizens. Uh, talk first. Violence is not the answer. All
Yeah.
this other stuff. And so you're sitting there thinking society is going to be just as sensitive to your kid as you're trying to make your kid sensitive to society.
Yeah.
It just doesn't play that way. And that's the part I fear. It's like, so I'm like, how do I raise you? Because
Mm.
I was raised, if they put your hands on you, all bets are off.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to raise you. If they put your hands on you, find someone else, because the second person is the one that always gets caught and gets in trouble.
Mhm. Mhm.
But by then, they don't already, I can go on and on for this, man. I can get emotional, but this is what I mean by the fear. Like, how do I put you in a position that now I don't care about prosperity, that you're safe?
Yeah. And how do you raise that? So raising black sons in America, um, part one is cultural
Hmm.
identity. And
Hmm.
you said something very key. What's feeding you? What are you seeing on television? What are you picking up in environments? What are you picking up when you go to a store and you've done nothing wrong and somebody says you stole something, and just based upon what they said, people are searching you as a child, and these are adults doing this just because somebody's said this. It didn't
Hmm.
it didn't happen. And it's
Hmm.
obvious that he didn't do that. So when we get into raising black sons in America, like I said, this can be so broad and we can dive into a lot of different stuff. But when we talk about cultural identity and we talk about what our sons are being fed, and we're raising our black sons, and a lot of us are raising our sons to be better than us, are raising our sons to be successful, are raising our sons to be safe, right? Are raising our sons to be good sons and to also be good young men. So when it comes to cultural identity, um, for me, I'm Black American. Let's start there. I'm Black American. For one, I definitely get stopped, and I'm always asked, "Where you from?" I can't say the city. I'm from Buffalo, New York, but I can't say the city, because I ain't.
Yeah,
But when I say where you from, I say from Buffalo. They'd be like, "Yeah, but where you from?" I'd be like, "Downtown." Like, I
yeah,
don't know
I get it. I
what
get
we
it.
talking about here. Round the way, and if you're from
Yeah.
round the way,
What
then I'm
part of the
talking about
diaspora are you from?
where you from, right? They trying to figure
Yeah.
out where I'm from, and I'm like, I'm Black American, and so that's a whole different culture identity. I know you're not Black American, right?
Mhm.
So that's even a whole nother part to the conversation as far as to that culture identity. For me, with my sons, there's a Black American identity. I did grow up with grandparents from down south, right? I did grow up in a very loving environment. I did grow up in an environment where my cousins were like brothers and sisters, right? I grew up in a church, God-fearing environment, and that played into a lot of our identity and into a lot of the culture that we are living in.
Mhm.
And that love and that environment is something that I wanted to display to my Black sons. And I wanted them to be able to see that it's okay to be loved, to show love as a man. So that's one of the first pieces I think about when it comes to cultural identity. Who are you? You know what I'm saying? Who are you as a son? My father died when I was 19. That's a very pivotal age. I don't really know who I am, right? And my parents weren't together before he passed away. So I'm figuring out this world. Like, who am I? I am watching television. I'm watching the Cosby Show in a different world. I'm seeing what's happening and being fed by that. There is hip hop out there. Hip hop is growing while we're
Mhm.
growing up, and that's a lot of culture. I did the Fab Five, who played at the Michigan
Sure.
University, and all the hip hop and all the things that were going on around
Mhm.
there. You were seeing that culture explode. For me, I'm trying to teach my sons to identify with who they are, to identify with where their parents came from, and to not let the world just tell you this is the way you have to be. Because there are some things that the world is showing you as a young Black man that I don't want you to measure up to. There's some things that I experienced as a young Black son, to what you said, before being a Black father, that I don't have to be this just because I grew up in quote unquote the projects. I don't have to be what the world, white America, we
Mhm.
talking about unfiltered, right? Other
Mhm.
people think that I am. I don't have to be that just because I grew up in this type of environment. But for me, I didn't have to be that because of my family. It goes
Mm.
back to what was modeled before me. And I was able to pick up on an identity because I had an option that was presented to me that some people didn't have that option. So raising
Mhm.
Black sons in America, I am looking to model that to my sons, that you don't have to be what the world is telling us. Because let's be real, in America, a lot of times the world is telling us that we're something that I don't believe that we are.
So, piggybacking off of that, the world is still, and I'm very straightforward with this. The world is trying to tell you that you don't matter. As you are presently constructed, you don't matter. So when we talk about cultural identity, and I appreciate you saying you identify as Black American, you've known me 20, 25 years. I identify as Haitian.
Mhm.
That that's why. Am I born in Haiti? No, I'm born here, but I'm raised in my culture.
Mhm.
Uh, so I truly identify as Haitian. But there's something you said prior to that that I really want to harp on. That you want to raise your kids to be successful. You want to raise your kids to be, good men. I'm looking at. I want to raise my kids to be emotionally stable and emotionally intelligent.
Mhm.
Right? I'm not saying you didn't say that because I
No,
believe you
no, no.
in
Yeah,
what you're saying, but
yeah.
I have to change everything now and say, listen, at the forefront of this, I need you to have, to your point, some level of self-esteem, some level of self-awareness, some level of self-love. You get what I'm saying? And then I need you to be able to understand what you're feeling in the moment. And so that shifted. And the reason why I brought that up is I grew up, I grew up Haitian in American Blacks community. It's a
Mhm.
conflict, right? Because the
Mhm.
culture and identity is a group that you feel you belong to. So there's shared norms, values, beliefs, almost a shared culture, right? So when you talk about shared culture, talking about shared norms, values, beliefs, attitudes that bring benefit to you, that directly conflicted with an American culture,
Mhm.
directly conflicted. And for a while, it took me some time to figure out where I stood in all of this.
Mhm.
Fast forward, my son goes to a predominantly white school. And I started realizing if I don't start teaching you history, if I don't start taking it out of the hands of your teachers and start teaching you history from the lens of a different community, you, you will no longer identify as black, self-identify as black.
Mhm.
You will start using verbiage as, well, we're all one people, which is fine by me, but you won't even. So I had to really sit down and start saying, okay, let me teach you Haitian history. Let me tell you about the Louisiana Purchase, and that was because France was losing to Haiti in the war. Let me tell you about how a lot of South America, the blueprint for their freedom was based on the Haitian Revolution. I had to give him a sense of pride. I had to start reintroducing food that was culturally based. To have him start saying to himself, I come from a people that matter.
Mhm.
And that's a roundabout way of kind of communicating this.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out how to do this because what I saw him wanting to do was perm his hair, turn it blonde. And I said, okay, what's happening now?
Mm.
Right? Because the images in media didn't show you a certain life. The images you're seeing in school. So at that moment, it was, we got to talk about cultural identity and how do we teach our children the history, whether it's Black American history, because it's connected, right?
Mhm.
Funny enough, we talk about that. What Chicago was founded by a Haitian,
Mhm.
right? So the blueprint for the American Civil War was right the Haitian Civil War. Um, so that's why I sit there and say, how do we start now telling our kids this is where you come from, not that you're descendants of slaves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you're the descendants of revolution, freedom fighters,
Yeah.
right? So I think when we start talking about as dads, and the reason I said this because I didn't start doing this till my son was maybe 12, 13,
Mhm.
right? Because when I saw the concern, when I saw the issues, when I addressed the issue, so on Black Dad Unfiltered, how do we address the issue from the time they're born?
Which is good. Yeah.
Which is how you start growing up and saying, and you choose your own identity because the cultural identity morphs as you get older. You start to decide what that identity is for yourself. But for the time you're born, you start having this knowledge that says, wait a minute, you get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Uh, I'm more than a conqueror,
Mhm.
right? So I mean,
I think it has to be taught. I think you said something real key too. We're gonna be on filter here. Uh you talked about your son and you talked about the importance of letting him know where he comes from because there are some schools and other things that are saying we're all people, right? But
mhm,
let's be real. If you watching here, you seeing what I'm about to say. If you're listening in, let me let you know. We are two, myself, Carlos V. Spencer, Coach Rod, we're two dark-skinned black men. So when I come into the room, you seeing a black man. Like, especially for white America, we're gonna be on filter. When I come into the room, when you come into the room, one of the first things that you're seeing is that's a black man. And that's
yeah,
one of the first things you're identifying that. And whatever comes with that thought for you, you're putting that on me before you even meet me and before I get a chance to say anything.
yeah, yeah,
So I love how you were saying, okay, yeah, we're all people, but we're our black people. And son, let me
listen.
teach you about that. Let me talk to you about the importance of that value. It's like you about to say something. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, 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 because you're hitting it right because I have stories for days, right? This goes back to why we started, right?
Mhm.
Because there's different phases to Black Dad. Uh, but when you say when you walk in and people recognize you, my son was like 6 feet, right? Muscles, and this is at the age of 13, 14.
Yeah.
It's like if I had this frame, I would have went pro. But I remember a teacher saying to him, and this is going to be when we talk about racism and discrimination and maybe unconscious bias. Teacher said to her, "Well, he's a big guy." I said, "Stop calling him big guy. He doesn't identify as big guy, right? Because when you put that on him, you turn him into a menace.
Mm.
I'm not going to let you do that to my son. His
Yeah.
name is Rod,
Mm.
right? Either you dress him as Rod, you dress him as Sir." And they looked at me dumbfounded because telling a grown man to address my son, but you're not going to change his identity on him because
Yeah.
this is what they do to warp our kids' minds, right? I'm telling you, the foundation is getting your kids to, when I say fall in love with yourself, Los, and we're going off topic, you got to get your kids to fall in love with who they are.
Mhm.
You got to. And the only way to do that is to feed them.
Mhm.
Feed them positive words, feed them positive imagery, feed them history. But what does that mean? That means you yourself, as a Black father, have to know what? Positive words,
Mhm.
history, skill sets. That's why we're having this
You gotta
conversation.
know as well.
Like,
Yeah.
how do we put tools in your toolbox that allows you now to say, "Oh, son, let me have this conversation with you." Do
Mhm.
you do you record the elders when they talk and share those stories with your children?
Mhm.
Because it goes like one of the things I love is Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp is forever quoting his grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But think about that. Think about that identity and how the grandfather had to have been talking to him, had to have been imparting wisdom into him, that it just stays with him. So yeah.
I don't think,
You
and
know.
I don't think that's off topic. I think that's right along when you're establishing a cultural identity and you're helping your son to establish that one.
Mhm,
You have to know where you come from. You said it earlier. Before I'm a Black father, I was a Black son. In order for me to establish this cultural identity for my son and not allow the world to tell him who he is when it contradicts who he really is, I have to establish that in him. We know this. The world's going to send whatever negative images. We don't got to worry about the world teaching negative stuff.
mhm.
We have to reinforce the positive things within our children. I'm gonna bring up another unfiltered thing, man.
Go
Ain't a
ahead.
lot of people talking about it, especially being from different cultures. And I'm not saying I'm speaking for all. I'm for sure speaking for some. Some Black Americans, we have an issue trying to find out what is our identity. And I'll say this. Y'all gonna be mad. You can say amen. You can say ouch. It's unfiltered. Sometimes we see other people like yourself. Rod's Haitian. He knows his culture. Oh, this person is from Guyana. They know their culture. This person is from St. Lucia. They know their culture. This person is Jamaica. They know their culture. Like sometimes some people who are Black Americans, when we see people from who are Caribbean, American, African American, African Caribbean, it's like you know your culture automatically. And some, again, I'm not saying all, I want to paint the broad stroke, but some who are Black Americans don't feel like they know their culture. What is my culture? What were we being fed? That oh, we came from slaves. Yeah, but I love what you said earlier. No. You came from royalty. That's not
Yeah.
where you came from. That's just a part of what happened. And I
Mhm.
love how my aunt always says that our people were not slaves; they were enslaved. So
Th-
say
that
somebody's a slave is saying that's who they are. So that's unfiltered for me, man. That some people who are Black Americans sometimes don't know their culture, and they feel
so
like people who are like yourself know your culture.
so when we talk about cultural identity, right? Again, shared values, beliefs, norms, you feel a sense of belonging, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Shared traditions.
Mhm.
So when we talk about, and let's say Black Americans, because I don't know, right? Because I know mine, right? Of the Caribbean islands, Haiti's the closest still in heritage, language to Africa. So we are the closest in terms of still keeping that connection to the quote unquote motherland. But even for Black Americans, I still think there's a rich history, even if you're Southern, especially if you're Southern, actually, there's a rich history there. It's how is it being taught? I think the most profound thing you just said right now was that your aunt told you you were enslaved. not slaves. It's as simple as the language.
Mhm.
It's as simple as embracing the conversation.
Mhm.
It's as simple as wanting to have that conversation. Growing up, nobody talked, other than school, nobody talked to me about slavery.
Mhm.
Not a single, not one person in my community,
Mhm.
right? When my son started growing up, I didn't have the conversation with him. And that's where it starts, right? If we start talking about the experiences, the struggles, the great men that were birthed out of it, uh, the Frederick Douglasses, how Nat Turner eventually evolved and motivated. Like if we just have these conversations off script,
Mhm.
right, and engage our children in conversation,
Mhm.
I think from there, the identity again is it doesn't have to tie to me being necessarily Haitian, right? It's just that's the community I grew up in.
Right.
That's why I say I identify as Haitian because I grew up in that community. If
Right.
I when I would go to Haiti, it's as if I never traveled. Same habits, right?
Mhm.
So I always tell people first, what is the shared values and beliefs? And if we don't know what values and beliefs are, then now it's the education part,
Yeah. And
right?
so I think go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You good?
Yeah, I think it's cool, man. Like for one, I want to bring that up for the person who's feeling like that for sure.
Yeah.
I will say as a backside because I want us to have conversation. I believe we're giving some solutions. You gave some very powerful things. You have to know yourself, find out who you are, and feed and have these conversations with your sons. Establish these things. What you pointed out. No, big man. No, you're not going to put that on my son. You're not going to put that on my son. That's not the culture I'm establishing for my son. This is the culture. This is the standard. I think we establish those things. So even bringing it up for me, which is something as a Black American, I think I dealt with. I think a lot of people are dealing with. I think we need to look at the culture that we do have, and it kind of goes back to what I said. My grandparents grew up in the South. Even the cultural, the identity that we had here of love, of family, right? Of for us, it was a God loving family. For us, it was our cousins were like our own siblings. That is the culture. And if you look in America, even itself, like it's a dope culture. Who hip hop, like who ain't stealing from that culture? Who's not trying to act like, right?
Mhm,
And so it is a
mhm.
dope culture. So I say that to bring up the other side of it, to know that you do have a beautiful culture within your family structure that you grew up in, but also look at the things that have happened in Black America and look at the beauty of it and start
Absolutely.
finding out the beauty of it and start teaching the beauty of the things that have happened here. I saw I went downtown Chicago. I saw the statue and the information. I have a lot of family in Chicago. Of I can't think of the gentleman, the name of him, but it was birthed from a Haitian person. And I got a chance to read that. I didn't know that growing up.
Mhm.
When I saw that, it made me feel good. It made me feel good. So again, I want us to give up some solutions, which I think we are giving. No, I know we're giving. And for me, that cultural identity, especially as a Black American, know that you have an identity from your family. And watch this, you can also establish one yourself for your family and for your sons.
A so now you talk about so now you're getting to something, right? Because the question is how do you raise a Black son? And what you just said is you as a Black dad can set the culture of the family, means you have to be present, set the culture of the family, right? And can now take an active role in shaping the identity for the family. That's why I sit there and say, when you were talking, I was like, listen, your house sounds like my house,
Mm-hmm.
right? We having fun. My cousins are my siblings. I got 54 first cousins,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we all massive. So I think if you're a dad listening, ask yourself this: what is the culture that you want to set for your family? And remember, culture is shared values, beliefs, norms, and attitudes that allow that one, if this is a corporate environment, that is comprised by those in that environment that make it meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're bringing this down to your family, what is the traditions, values, norms, beliefs you want for your family? Because eventually their identity will be birthed out of it.
Yeah.
But if as a dad, you actually never sat down to start that conversation, the question has to be, where will their identity be birthed from?
If it ain't birthed from you. Man, I think that's dope. I think that's dope. I know we're about to wrap this one up, but I will say this. Yeah, like you said, our families are the same. But I remember the first time I heard your mother talk. And your mother was talking, and after she left the room, I said, "Yo, Rod, what did she say?"
Mhm.
You remember
She
what you
doesn't
said
know
to me?
that. I don't know. I don't remember. That's like 15, 20 years ago. What she
No,
say?
you was like, "Bro, she was speaking in English. What you mean?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "Really?"
Yo, listen, in
But
high
the
school,
accent, I remember the accent was so thick. I really was like, "Okay, I'm waiting for my brother to interpret what his mom just said to me because he understood every word, but I ain't catch
listen,
none of it."
in high school, she'd be in the background. And if we have any Haitian listeners, they're gonna know exactly what I'm saying.
Okay,
She'd be in the background talking, and people are like, why is your mother yelling? She yelling? I didn't even know. 'Cause that's just what we do.
that's what we do. That's what
You know
we
what I mean?
do. Yes, but even being introduced to it, man, I think that's even the beauty of our culture as well. Like when I
Mhm.
met you, when we met in college, and I met other people from different cultures who were black as well, it just showed me the beauty of it, right?
Yeah,
It showed me more similarities than it did differences. I can definitely say that. And even the differences I loved. Like I loved this is another unfiltered. I'm almost ashamed to say it, but I'm gonna say it for us, y'all. I'm telling on us. A lot of times when we hear accents, we think everybody Jamaican. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We unfiltered here, right? We
no, no.
unfiltered.
When I grew up, I heard that a lot. Yeah.
But I've grown to find out that everybody who's black with an accent ain't Jamaican. so, so I've grown to love that and to find out more about that as well. Man, anything else, man? That like I said, we can go on for days. This is part one. We definitely gonna pick up with part two. But raising black sons in America, we're talking about cultural identity. Anything else you want to share on that piece, man? Before we close this part out?
So let's walk away with let's walk away with some tips. Can we talk about some tips right
Yes,
now?
sir. Yes, sir.
All right, cool. So one dad to many dads, right? From me to you to whoever dad is listening in, to whoever mothers, sons, aunts, nieces, anybody in the family that cares about this subject. Again, let's create a framework. I want to give a framework for how we can start tackling cultural identity, right? And I'm only telling you what I tried to put into practice. Number one, know the history. It's important to know the history. What's that famous saying? And I don't want to sound silly by misquoting it, right? But those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Know the history. One of the challenges that I see with my son is when I talk, for him it's abstract in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then I have to systematically explain to him the history and show him the timeline for him to understand where he falls in this, continuum.
Mhm.
So know the history. Don't be afraid to have these conversations of the history. This is why you see certain communities getting rid of textbooks.
Mhm.
This is why, what was it, Frederick Douglass, and I'm going to paraphrase it, right? Teach a man to read and he's no longer fit to be a slave. I paraphrased it. So once you can share that history, it's going to start the conversation of your children asking themselves, well, then who am I in this?
Mhm.
Establish traditions, establish customs and tradition. For you, Los, I can tell you right now, every Sunday, you guys were going to church, right? And if I guess, you probably were dressing up,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So we knew there was probably family dinners. We were going to church. People were probably going to play on the same sports teams, whatever it is. In my culture, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I know we're sharing tips and we're trying to wrap this up. Um, every January 1st, I don't know if you know this, we have a particular soup. It's called soup jumu.
Mhm.
And every January 1st, almost any Haitian household across the globe, I'll be willing to bet 90% of them have this soup. It's one of the things I'm most proud of when I talk about being Haitian. So when Haitians were enslaved, right, and we're talking about under the rule of Napoleon uh, in France, we made this soup for the slave masters.
Mhm.
On January 1st, I think 1804, when we won our independence, we made the soup for ourselves.
Mm.
So even though this is over 200 years ago,
Yeah.
whenever I have that soup on January 1st, it can be in my head, it does not matter. I feel the freedom. I feel a sense of pride. I feel it because this soup and what it means is powerful. So think about, what are you doing in your own family to put into practice, right?
Mhm.
To help form this identity that's affirming, right? And then the language of communication. You and I both are men of faith, right? What language are we using around our children? When at some point I stopped cursing,
Mhm.
because I said, I don't care if my kids curse, but because I'm your role model, I have to show you there's a way that I can communicate how I feel
Mhm.
and articulate it. So those are little 3 tips that I'm saying, folks, if we want to start changing this, and if you see your kid is going down this path that you think may not be good for them, there's some things we can talk about and do.
Most definitely. I think for me, and you quoted Frederick Douglass. I'm gonna quote him again. It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair a broken man. Right? Frederick Douglass said that. And I think what we've been saying, how do you raise a black son in America? Right? Culture, identity, but how do you raise a black son in America? That quote is always so profound because it's not that you can't rebuild a broken man, but it's harder to do it that way. It's easier to build a strong child. And I think a lot of what we're saying, raising black sons in America, is building them and is having the information. And here it is, unfiltered, right? I think we'll both will agree with this. There's no perfect way.
No.
There's no blueprint. And so any father who's listening to this, who's watching this, like, understand, me and my brothers, we have the conversation with each other. Man, this is hard. Like, this ain't easy, right? Doing this, trying to figure this out. Man, I feel like I'm messing this up. And I've had conversations with older black men, older black fathers, and they've often told me, listen, there's no blueprint, right? You're not going to always get it right. It's not going to always be perfect. So I don't want you to feel like you have to be perfect. I don't want you to feel like if you've missed it in the past or you're going to miss it in the future, that you can't keep going. But build will be my tip. And in that building, have the conversation. Some of us come from a culture where men weren't that affectionate, where men didn't communicate that much, where men were, get up, boy, men don't cry. Some of it, sometimes we come from that, or sometimes that's what we believe. And so my other tip would be, have the conversation. I have conversations with my black sons. And when I say it's a conversation, it's a conversation. It's not just me talking to them or at them. Now, I'm their father. I ain't your friend. You know what I'm saying? My oldest son, he's 21. So we're getting more into the space where I'm guiding you, right? But my 10-year-old and my soon to be 12-year-old, I ain't your friend. I'm your father, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But still, I have conversations with them and I provide them a safe space to talk to their father. And I can say that from doing that, as a tip to somebody who's doing that or looking to do that, or looking to utilize that, my sons have found it to be a safe space to have a conversation with their father, even with stuff I have to correct them on. I have tried to build them, and I've had and continue to have conversations and checkups. What does that look like? How you doing? So how you feeling? Emotionally, how you feeling? Are you feeling anxious at all? Are you feeling scared at all? Watch this. It's okay to have those feelings. And I want you to share those feelings with me. And I want you to understand that sometimes you're going to feel that way and we'll work through it together. We'll work through it together. So for me, my tip would be that definitely it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair a broken man. Have the conversations with your son and do it early and talk to them. And when I say talk to them, have a conversation and provide a safe space for them to be able to communicate back to you. Black Dad Unfiltered. What's up, baby?
We at the clock, man. But funny enough, there was no black father that I was able to talk to.
Wow.
Maybe you one of the few people. I
Mm.
actually had to learn a lot about being a black father from watching black mothers on
Mm.
loving and nurturing. So I mirrored what mothers did and added that to my toolkit as a father, because there was no other black men that I can talk to. And when you said that, I was like, Wow, yeah, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I had to literally look at the black moms and say, "Huh, how are you doing this?" Okay, I'm gonna mirror this with my children.
Mhm.
So it's just interesting, but that's a conversation for another day, man. I
It
love
is,
the
man.
tip.
That's a powerful one. That's a powerful one. Be the change that you want to see out here when you say that. That is the topic. We gotta, yeah. We're gonna come back and talk about that topic,
Mhm.
what Coach Rod just said. So listen, Black Dad Unfiltered, part one, raising black boys or how to raise black sons in America, talking about cultural identity. This is part one. We're gonna come back with part two. Anything else you want to share, Coach Rod, with the people before we close this out?
Listen, man, we just starting. We just getting started.
Same. And meaning we're just getting started, which means we're going to keep going. We're going to keep driving this thing. We're going to
Mhm.
keep doing this thing. If you're watching, go ahead, subscribe. You know, if this is on the YouTube channel, click it, subscribe, share, comment. Definitely subscribe for notifications so you'll get the information. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening in. Keep tuning in, and we're going to keep chiming these things out and bringing different topics. This is part one. We're going to come back with part two. I'm Carlos V. Spencer here with my guy, Coach Rod, man. Black Dad Unfiltered.
One and only.
Let's go, let's grow, let's grow.